Last week in Michigan politics, Tuesday was election night for communities across Michigan. What the unofficial results now say. Plus, smoke from Canadian wildfires blanketed parts of the state again this week, continuing what's now a years-long summer trend. What officials are saying as they call for more to be done to stop it. And one West Michigan village is a major step closer to becoming a full-fledged city. Why some feel now's the time, and why others think it's complicated. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. And we begin at the state capitol in Lansing, where there is still no state budget as of earlier this week. But lawmakers signaled that negotiations are ongoing. The legal deadline to pass the budget was more than a month ago. This week, Republican House Speaker Matt Hall addressed the budget in a news conference. He praised Governor Gretchen Whitmer's work to get a budget done, as he saw it, but also said he's disappointed with Senate Democrats. Hall claims they are using data that's out of date to delay passing a budget.
And if the Democrats were smart, they would empower Governor Whitmer to lead them. She's much more popular than the legislative Democrats are. She knows how to win, and her and I have demonstrated that we know how to work together and make deals. So I think they'd be smart to empower her, and I think we would get a budget done very fast.
And state lawmakers have until October 1st to pass a state budget. If not, the government could face a shutdown. The Secretary of State office on 28th Street at the East Belt Line will be closed for part of August. The office is being remodeled. It closed last week and will reopen Monday, August 18th. During the closure, you can still do most services online at michigan.gov. Other nearby offices include Grand Rapids Township or Wyoming. State officials say the upgrade will improve service and accessibility. A West Michigan village is one step closer to becoming an official city. A citizens advisory committee in the village of Sparta has been working for months to educate the community on what being a city would actually mean. The village has made attempts to become a city a few times before, and some say now's the time to make the change. However, some with township government feel this could complicate how things are done. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson went to the committee's last meeting and explains what happened next.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
A committee set up to explore what it would look like for the village of Sparta to become a full city government wrapped up its months-long work adopting its final report and recommending the village go forward with becoming a city.
A city is a primary form of government where a village is under the township and the county. So by becoming a primary form of government, you have more autonomy, you collect all your own taxes, and you're in control of your elections.
Committee chair and member of the village council, Robert Karlstrom, says he's fully on board with becoming a city, but says the issue is causing a rift between the village and the Sparta township government.
The township won't cease to exist, but it will become smaller. If the residents of Sparta vote to become a city, then everything within the city limits of Sparta will no longer be a part of the township of Sparta.
Township Supervisor Dale Bergman says the governments have collaborated on several projects that have benefited the community, like the library and historical society. He says the village shouldn't try to fix what's not broken.
When you do this process, it's like a divorce. You got shared assets, and they're going to be split up. I know it's going to cause a lot of hard feelings and friction.
Karlstrom says property taxes would drop marginally since residents wouldn't be paying township taxes. Bergman, however, believes people would end up paying more in taxes.
We're supplying these services, and the village, unless they don't want these services, how would they not raise taxes?
Well, Karlstrom says the village council will take the next step toward cityhood at its next meeting. The process is far from over, though. A city charter would still have to be drafted, approved by the state, and voted on by residents. And smoke from Canadian wildfires continued to be a problem in West Michigan last week, with several days of air quality alerts. An expert explains for us how it could be linked to a changing climate, as officials here in Michigan are calling for more to be done to contain those fires.
We've really reached a tipping point.
That's how Ryan Ness from the Canada Climate Institute described it. Hundreds of wildfires rage on in Canada, bringing heavy smoke and air quality hazards to West Michigan and areas across the United States. Places from Detroit to Mackinac to Grand Rapids covered in recent weeks. It's a number of factors affecting Canada's forests that he says have created a perfect storm.
It's a combination of hotter summers that dry them out, shorter winters with less snowpack to keep things moist in the spring, regular drought conditions.
The scene triggering a smoke alert in Michigan. Grand Rapids air quality on Tuesday afternoon labeled as unhealthy for sensitive groups.
Ironically, a warming climate also means that these systems often move slower. We get stagnant hot air settling in places for longer periods of time.
According to ABC News, hundreds of fires still deemed out of control. It's had leaders here in Michigan calling for further action to the north.
I would hope that we could work together. They very clearly need better fire management. This isn't a problem that we saw a decade ago, but it is something that we've been seeing in the last couple of years.
On the state's east side, Macomb County's Public Works Commissioner also calling on the Canadian government to be more aggressive in containing the blaze. And on U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra to, quote, make some noise. It's unacceptable, she said, for our friends in Canada to simply say the fires will burn out or wait until December.
The thing that governments can do, and Canada's government can do better on this as well, is reduce the emissions, reduce the burning of fossil fuels that are causing climate change.
But given the research that's been done from climate scientists, Ness feels it suggests a clear result.
This is the new normal.
And we did hear this week from the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa. In a statement, Ambassador Hoekstra said air tankers, firefighting crews, complex incident management teams, and overhead staff have mobilized to Canada. The statement also saying in part, quote, the United States and Canada have a long history of supporting one another in times of crisis. Canadians stood with us during the tragic California wildfires earlier this year, and we are committed to standing with Canada now. We have his full statement and more details on this story on our website, 13onyourside.com. And the presence of plastics in our water has been a major concern for a long time, but there is not much data on how exactly it impacts our health. We spoke with a local water expert and a lawmaker hoping to change that. Health hazards in Michigan's waterways have long been a top concern for its people, given the state's care over a vast amount of the world's fresh water supply. And it's what we might not see that has many worried.
Something like 90% of water samples that we take or other scientists across the Great Lakes takes, you find microplastics in that.
Plastics, in particular micro and nanoplastics. They're tiny and hard to remove, and they're virtually everywhere.
Even in remote parts of the Great Lakes, like the national parks we have, you find microplastics there. We know that we find them in our own bodies, but the big unknown is what are the implications of that?
Now, a member of Michigan's congressional delegation is aiming to tackle what some see as a crucial data gap.
It's time, particularly as it pertains to plastics and public health, that we move past alarming headlines and actually get access to data.
Congresswoman Haley Stevens this week introducing what's been named the Plastic Health Research Act.
I just kept seeing in terms of plastic health coming up again and again, and not enough backing for research.
If passed, the bill would put $10 million each year between 2026 and 2030 toward research programs and grants to study how plastic exposure impacts our health.
I don't want to do good policy making without good data. And that's why we need to reject dogmatism and really search for and identify the science.
Somewhere where there's little knowledge, but that could help to find a solution.
The concern is that buildup might be a problem itself, or that other chemicals might be attached to those plastic particles and may have some negative effects on human health. I think that is an open question, and one that's hopefully will be the focus of future research.
It was election night for folks across the state in local elections Tuesday. And coming up, we take you through what the unofficial results say the voters have decided. Your voice, your vote, and the unofficial results are in from Tuesday's local elections. Starting with Ottawa County and the race for Ferrysburg Mayor, Richard Carlson received the most votes, followed by Jerry Sias. The two will face off in November. One candidate was eliminated in the Zeeland City Council election, with 6 moving on to fill 3 positions in November. And in the Holland School District, voters approved a $49 million bond proposal. You can find all the results from Tuesday's election on 13onyourside.com. And in Kent County, Grattan Township voters passed one of the 3 proposals on their ballot. They voted in favor of a public safety millage, but rejected a rezoning proposal that would have allowed more housing on Belding Road. And they also rejected a proposal to preserve farmland and open space. And voters in Kent County also decided who would move on from the primary in the race for 2 seats on the Cedar Springs City Council. One candidate was eliminated following the election Tuesday, leaving Lisa Atchison, Rose Powell, Jacob Puckett, and Jill Owen vying for the 2 seats on the City Council this November. And in Muskegon County, voters considered multiple millage proposals alongside the City of Muskegon's mayoral primary. The uncertified results show incumbent Mayor Ken Johnson surviving his first challenge from other candidates. Johnson and Bob Garrettson will move on to the general election in November, both earning more votes than John Allen. Johnson secured the most votes with nearly 60% of the more than 3,400 cast. Also in the county, the Muskegon Area District Library System narrowly avoided losing what the library said would have been 90% of its operational budget. According to those uncertified results, voters approved a 10-year renewal of the existing library millage rate, plus a slight increase. The millage proposal passed by less than 1% margin. The library says it will use the increased funding to expand general library hours and expand its popular services and resources. Muskegon Township voters on Tuesday also approved a millage renewal for public safety, according to unofficial results, but rejected a proposed increase. 13 on Your Side's Lance Wilhelm talked with the police chief, who explains what this means for the township.
We're not just barely below the average. If you were to double our police department tomorrow, we would still be just under the average.
Not only will the Muskegon Township Police Department not be doubling, it won't be adding any officers at all.
Our guys are basically doing double and triple tasks that they shouldn't be having to do.
Muskegon Township voters shot down a proposal Tuesday to increase the public safety millage, money that goes to the local police and fire departments.
That would have been nice. But I respect what the voters chose.
The millage increase would have meant roughly an additional $1.3 million per year from taxpayers, doubling the current amount generated from the public safety millage. That increased funding would have gone to hiring additional staff and upkeeping equipment. Voters instead chose to keep the current millage, which means that some improvements that the departments were hoping for, like shortened response times, won't be as feasible.
And if you've ever been in a situation where you need to call 911 and you need officers or fire there quickly, you understand how important response times are.
With prices on everything going up, the police and fire departments have to learn how to do more with less, similar to what residents are going through in their own homes.
Like if you break it down to what the maintenance cost alone for a fire engine, it's about $100,000 a year.
According to the fire department, the cost of purchasing a fire engine like this one before COVID was roughly $500,000. Now, that number is over $1 million. We
really are stewards of the finances that the public gives to us, and we want to stretch that dollar the best we can. So we're going to regroup, we're going to put a plan in place, and we're going to make sure that we are fiscally responsible.
But regardless of the shot-down budget bump, both the fire and police chiefs reiterated that they are thankful for the funding that the public has already given them.
Yeah, I'm going to tell my voters all day long, thank you for making it out to the polls. Thank you for the renewal. Thank you for keeping us maintaining where we've been. Of course, do we want to grow and move forward? Yes, and we will. It just might be at a slower rate.
And per Lance's reporting, the police and fire chiefs told us they don't think another public safety millage increase will be showing up on ballots again anytime soon. So they're hoping to use the funds they do have as effectively as possible, while also trying to get more funding in other ways, like grants. And now in Detroit, the city council president Mary Sheffield dominated the primaries for mayor. Those unofficial results say she has secured a spot in the general election. According to Detroit's election website, Sheffield secured 51% of that vote, with Reverend Solomon Kinlock following with 18%. From this primary, the two candidates with the most votes moved to the general elections in November 2nd. And just roughly 3 months after he first announced his campaign, the first high-profile Democrat has dropped out of the race for the state's open U.S. Senate seat. That's according to the Associated Press, which reports former State House Speaker Joe Tate is not continuing his run. Tate served as Speaker during the last House session that ended in gridlock in December, when enough lawmakers boycotted session and stopped the House from doing business. According to federal campaign finance filings, Tate was far behind in fundraising compared to other major Democrats in the race. While others had raised millions, Tate had raised just under $200,000 between April and June. Tate reportedly told the AP he was looking into re-election for his House seat. New U.S. tariff rates have been coming into play over roughly the last week, but what could it mean for a Michigander's wallet? What experts had to say over this past week? That's next. Could international trade be tied to recent price increases at your local grocery store? We heard from an economic expert on it last week. Going to the grocery store, prices on many items may be a little higher than you might have expected. For months, talk of tariffs from the Trump administration and how they could affect industries like agriculture may have many wondering whether they're to blame. We spoke with a local economist who said that's definitely a possibility later on.
I think certainly down the road, we're going to see price increases from tariffs.
But Wayne State Economics Department Chair Kevin Cotter signaled not quite yet for the grocery market.
Tariffs keep changing, so even for goods that have been hit with the tariff, importers are waiting to see, is this tariff going to stay before deciding to raise prices?
Rather, price increases on household staples can be linked to a number of reasons. Whether it's eggs that may still be recovering from supply disruptions due to avian flu.
They've come back down some, but they're still higher than they were a year ago.
According to a report out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the two states with the largest egg layer losses this year due to avian flu, Michigan neighbors Indiana and Ohio. Or if it's prices on beef, which he says are in fact weather-related.
Ground beef in particular, beef prices have gone up about 12% in the past year. Those parts of the country that grow the most cattle, especially in grazing lands, have been hit by drought. That's forced farmers to cut back on their herds.
Same can go for your morning cup of joe.
The countries that grow a lot of coffee are Brazil and Vietnam, and they've been hit by drought that has affected coffee production.
But many agree that an impact from tariffs is still likely to come, and very soon. But whether from tariffs, the environment, or elsewhere, there are options to those looking to shop smart.
Not only watching out for sales, but also looking for where price is lowest. It's just a matter of how much time you're willing to spend doing price comparisons.
Now, President Donald Trump's new tariffs went into effect for many countries around the world this week. We look at what the changes could mean for your wallet here in Michigan. Sweeping U.S. tariffs now in effect for countries and goods across the globe. But how could it impact Michigan buyers? Groceries, for example, one expert told us last week, hadn't felt much of a tariff impact just yet.
Tariffs keep changing, so even for goods that have been hit with the tariff, importers are waiting to see, is this tariff going to stay before deciding to raise prices.
But what about other areas like the state's all-important auto industry and prices you pay on the lot?
Without a doubt, we're seeing the same trend within autos in these last few months.
Now, I'm in a Ford right now, a car from a Michigan-based company that many tend to say helped put the world on wheels, but is now reportedly expecting a $2 billion hit this year due to tariffs. I talked to an auto expert earlier this week who told me essentially many automakers are eating much of the cost of this so far.
We were expecting some of that price pressure to intensify much sooner, and it really hasn't quite yet.
What some analysts are expecting now isn't nearly as high as it was earlier this year, due to things like carve-outs for the U.S.'s existing trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. But this expert signaled, don't expect companies to continue footing the bill for long, especially as new model year vehicles hit the lots in the next few months.
I'd say it's probably more on the order of maybe $1,500, but I say all that, $1,500 on an average transaction price that's still running in $48,000, $49,000, that can have material impacts.
On top of Thursday's new rates, President Donald Trump also announced this week a 100% tariff expected for semiconductors and computer chips not manufactured in the U.S. It comes weeks after officials in Michigan said the state lost out on a massive semiconductor plant project. Documents outlined how the deal set for Genesee County would have been between the state's Economic Development Corporation and SanDisk Technologies, Inc., known for flash memory products like SD cards. According to documents involved in the project, it was expected to create roughly 9,400 jobs, with another 5,000 during peak construction time. And it would have been a major priority for term-limited Governor Gretchen Whitmer as she stares down her final year in office. The MEDC confirmed to 13 on Your Side that SanDisk had backed out of the project. The head of the MEDC cited larger factors and conditions as being behind the decision. 13 on Your Side reached out to SanDisk Corporation on Thursday for confirmation and whether any reconsideration had taken place should the MEDC's description of events be true. As of Friday afternoon, we had not yet heard back. Developers are hoping to rake in some government dollars for what many are expecting to be a major expansion of a popular regional attraction. When we come back, we share the latest updates on the project that has certainly had the community talking. New renderings for the John Ball Zoo are showing us what a massive aquarium on the banks of the Grand River could look like for Kent County. And on top of fundraising, developers are hoping to pay it through state, federal, and county dollars. Plans include wetland walkways, research space, education and interactive exhibits, and more. Many details still have to be worked out, especially since the location builders want is a former landfill in Walker. The zoo hopes to complete it by 2031. It's expected to cost $370 million, roughly. A study from 2024 estimated in 10 years the aquarium could generate $2.9 billion for Kent County. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com.